You are watching the Chronicle's budget show. We are here today covering the 6th full-fledged budget by the NDA 3.0 government, the first after its re-election. And it's the 7th consecutive time that our Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has presented this budget. It's the NDA government's budget is widely visible with the budget focusing on Andhra Pradesh and Bihar. Hi, I'm Anushka Bharadwaj, your host for this informative panel discussion. The budget for this fiscal year has promised to make India a Viksit Bharat and a $7 trillion economy by 2030. Four major areas were mentioned by our finance minister of focus. It is to focus on the Garib, the Mahila, the Yuva and Annadata. There were 9 priorities mentioned in the budget by our finance minister. Productivity and resilience in agriculture, employment and skilling, inclusive HRD and social justice, manufacturing and services, urban development, energy security, infrastructure, innovation, research and development, and next generation reforms. Today we'll be addressing the concerns about income tax slab structure, the new changes in the old regimes, the rising inflation or बढ़ती महंगाई, the relation of GDP growth and government spendings and borrowings. We've gathered a panel here to help us navigate through these topics and answer the burning questions. Let me start by introducing our members. We have Krishnanshu Panda, Nehal Sharma, Ananya Ganotra and Mimansha Srivastav joining us on this panel. As we all know that the finance landscape has been relatively stable since 2020 with no significant changes to this year's structure. But this year has brought forth changes in the new income tax regime. So before we dive into a deep discussion for the same, we have Mimansha who will be giving us a basic explanation of these changes.
Thank you, Anushka. Let's take a look at where does the money comes from. 28% from borrowings and liabilities, 19% from income tax, GST and other taxes 18%, 17% from corporation tax, 7% from non-tax revenue and 5% from excise duties. Coming back to income tax, 19% which is equals to 11 lakh crores. Now coming to the income tax slabs, there have been no changes in the old regime, but there have been changes in the new regime. Now going forward with both the regimes slowly, taxpayers will have to choose between the old regime and the new regime again. The old regime exemption limit is up to 2.5 lakhs. Individuals earning between 2.5 lakhs to 5 lakhs will have to pay 5%. 5 lakhs to 10 lakhs will have to pay 20% and above 10 lakhs will have to pay 30%. Going forward with the new regime, changes have been made in the new regime in the tax slabs and deductions. Exemption limits it up to 3 lakhs. Tax slab individuals earning between 3 lakhs to 7 lakhs will have to pay 5%. 7 lakhs to 10 lakhs will have to pay 10%. 10 lakhs to 12 lakhs will have to pay 15% and 12 lakhs to 15 lakhs 20% and above 15 lakhs 30%. Exemption limit is 3 lakhs and deduction up to 1.5 lakh is applicable for the individuals opting for section 80C, which is on home insurance, public provident fund and employee provident fund. Standard deduction has been increased to 75,000 from 50,000 previous year. New regime individuals opting for new regime can also save up to rupees 17,500. Getting back to Anushka and our experts to know what are the implications of the new income tax slabs and the changes.
Thank you, Mimansha. Thank you so much. So, this year's budget has brought forth many changes in the new regime, while none have been made in the old that were much awaited by the common masses. And the finance minister claims that these changes will bring relief to taxpayers. But will they really? And how will they impact a common man's finances? So, my question now is for the experts. How will these changes impact the decision-making process for the individuals who are now choosing between the old and new tax regimes?
Firstly, thank you so much for having me on the panel. As we saw, the new tax regime has been updated, but the changes have been very minute. Much more was expected by the common man. The tax changes were only in the first 3 sections. The section was hardly 1 lakh was increased for the second 5% income tax rate, which is earlier was 3 to 6 lakhs, now 3 to 7 lakhs. Similarly, there's not much change in the 15% slab, 10% slab either. So while finance minister claims that around 2/3 of the taxes are coming from the new tax regimes, people are still choosing for the old tax regime because it has its own deductions. No doubt the new tax regime has made it more simpler. so people are opting for it. But I think more was expected from it, and that will be a factor when the people will decide which regime to choose.
Well, there is tax relief for the middle class, and their salaried individuals will save up to at least 17,500 annually in taxes with this tax relief. But what about the concessions and exemptions that existed in the old regime and people who relied on it? Are we always going to look towards the acceptance and the upturns just by such small changes in the new regime?
Agreed to you. Firstly, I agree to Krishnanshu's point. Yes, more changes were expected. Even in the standard deductions, the deductions have increased from 50,000 to 75,000. People were expecting more. The expectations before budget were that it will be increased up to 1 lakh, but that didn't happen. But to answer your question, there people still have to choose between the old regime and the new regime. But the reason why government introduced the new regime back in 2020 is because it wanted more people to shift towards the new regime. They want to make the taxing process more simpler, and that is the reason they introduced it. Now, you claimed that finance minister said that more than 2/3 of individuals have opted for the new regime in the financial year of 23. So that's why they have made the changes in the new regime. So firstly, it's important to understand that the old regime was a more saving oriented regime. The old regime had concessions and exemptions and deductions because it wanted people to shift, because it wanted people to save more. It wanted people to move more towards the economy more towards a saving oriented method. It was so that people inculcate the habit of saving more. Now that the GDP has been static for a few years and we are looking towards increasing it, we are trying to move towards a more consumption oriented model. We are looking towards a more where there is more money in the market so that the growth is increased. According to yesterday's economic survey also, the India's growth is expected to increase by 7% by the end of this financial year, whereas China is expected to grow by 5%. UK, countries like United Kingdom are expected to grow by 0.5%, which is even below 1%. So when we are looking towards a more growth oriented model, that is why the government actively wants citizens to shift more towards the new regime.
I would also like to add here that as my co-panelist Nehal said, that the old regime had tax deductions for many people, and those are not available now. But because of those deductions, what happened is that the people with businesses who used to invest a lot, they were the ones who got the benefits and not the middle class. The salaried population was burdened with the tax for this country. According to the data, almost the average tax for a salaried person was around 70 to 80,000. But for a business owner who used to take the benefits, the top brass of the economic strata, it was hardly 17 to 18,000 on an average. So with the new regime and the deduction of the TDS, what has happened is that to a certain extent the relief has been given to the salaried people.
To add to your point, this difference in salaried employees and business owners is that when in our population, the population of salaried employees was 1.88 million and the population of business owners was 1.89 million.
Yeah.
It was very similar to each other. Then why is there so much difference between the taxation of the two?
Exactly.
That was the major question, and to answer that, the new regime was introduced.
Yeah.
To solve those problems, the new regime was introduced. However, I totally agree with the point that the increase in slabs, the increase in deductions should have been more. Because these slabs haven't been increased since 10 years. It's been 10 years. The last change was back in 2014 when it was 20% for the income of 5 lakh and 30% for the income of 10 lakh. This has not changed in 10 years. And if we go by the average rate of inflation, which was at 6%, then the real value of 5 lakhs and 10 lakhs today would be 2.8 lakhs and 5.6 lakhs. There is a major difference. 10 years have changed a lot, and therefore there should have been more change in the income tax slabs and deductions.
Now coming to angel taxes, we know that the angel tax has been abolished, but we can observe that the Sensex and Nifty have been crashing, the LTCG and STT have been increasing. So what exactly is the government intending to do, and where exactly is the market heading, and how will this affect our investors?
I think we should make it clear for our audience what angel tax is. So basically, angel tax is the money that Indian investors have to pay for the buying shares in unlisted companies, and that's around that used to be around 30.9%, and now it has been abolished. So what makes it helpful is that now the investors have more capital in their hand, more profit in their hand. This will drive the amount of investment into the companies now. So that is a very interesting benefit that will help the investors.
That is, in fact, last month actually, the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade Secretary Rajesh Kumar Singh actually demanded the removal of angel tax. So this was something that was in conversation since a very long time, and investors have been demanding at least a reduce in the angel tax. Now that it has been abolished, it is definitely going to benefit.
But I also truly believe that we also knew at some point that angel tax was there to have some sort of regulation on money laundering, illicit funds. So we also need to question that if the angel tax is completely abolished, where is the regulation for illicit funds being taken as legitimate funds? Where is the money laundering regulations? And now how will investors look in the in the market? And how there will be a gap between the investors and how much it will affect the market. There should be some regulation, some form of rules that follow up with the abolition.
Definitely, it was introduced back in 2012 actually to curb the use of unaccounted money. So that was its purpose. But it's been like 2012 was 12 years ago. We've moved forward. We need definitely need provisions to address this problem. But what is also important to understand is that we are a growing economy. We are looking more towards startups. We are trying to encourage more investments in companies, and we are trying to generate more employment through startups. So according to data, if angel tax is removed, we have about 1,41,000 registered startups. They are going to benefit from these because it was earlier claimed by startups that these high tax rates make investing in startups unattractive. So it's going to attract more investment in this. Also, angel tax used to wipe away a major part of the investable surplus that these startups used to have. It used to take away a major chunk of the surplus that these startups had to invest and to grow their, it used to hurt their growth. So a startup is a very, it's in a very growing stage, and when a major chunk of the investment that you've got goes away in tax, it makes it more unattractive. It attracts less youth towards it. It makes it more difficult. So that is why this is definitely going to benefit the rise of startups in India, and this will benefit the startups and increase the growth of startups at a higher rate.
So, talking about inflation, retail inflation surged to 5.1% in June this year, and food inflation surged to 9.4% in the month. While steps are being taken according to the budget to ensure supplies of perishable goods reach markets adequately, but there are also challenges of high unemployment and increasing national debt. So my question here is, while inflation has already burnt a hole in the pockets of our Aam Janta, how well do these changes in this year's budget spell relief for Indians, especially for the low and middle class income households, from the triple threat of inflation, joblessness and mounting debt?
As Nirmala Sitharaman clearly pointed out, that in line with the interim budget, their focus is the four stratas, which is the farmers, the women, the youth, and the poor. So there have been policies and announcement for all of them, whether it be the Bhu Aadhar for the farmers, whether it's the promotion of women workforce, or the very importantly that came out was the youth skill and employment program, wherein the government is going to help 1 crore youth get internships, and they'll make sure they get a stipend, and in top 500 companies. So these are some ways that they are trying to bridge that gap. Apart from that, the increase in the mudra loan limit for the poor, that is also going to help them a lot in this case.
See, as the anchor mentioned regarding food inflation, there was one thing that food inflation wasn't mentioned at all during the economic survey as well. And if we take up the data of consumer price index, there has been a hike up in the CPI index due to food inflation from May to June. 9.36% it came up to. And there has been no relief regarding this or no mention of it at all.
Yeah, but it was also mentioned, one thing that we missed is that it was also mentioned by the finance minister in the budget speech that India's inflation is at a stable growth. 4.1%. It has been moving at a stable rate, and the co-inflation, that I agree with you, it excludes the inflation of fuels and foods, but the co-inflation has been at the rate of 3.1%. Now the food inflation, the food prices are burning in the market, and there was no mention of it in the economic survey of yesterday, but there were some suggestions that were given. The economic survey of India yesterday, when it was announced in the parliament, it clearly stated that the measures that the government has to take regarding inflation should keep food inflation aside. Now a primary reason for that is because, okay, so it also gave a few suggestions regarding oil seeds, it gave a few suggestions regarding vegetable production, it gave many more suggestions. What is important to understand is that food inflation is rising. There are certain external factors to it. Those external factors have to do with geopolitics, wars. We are majorly hurt by them, and one important factor, the major important factor, is rainfall. The rainfall since past few years has been affecting farming at a major rate. Even though this year we are expecting a better rainfall, and let's hope that the farming farming goes at a good rate and we are able to manage the food prices. But okay, coming back to the suggestions by the economic survey, so they suggested regarding pulses, regarding oil seeds. So the government today in the budget also announced a mission for pulses and oil seeds to strengthen their storage and production. A major cause of food inflation is also because we yield, yes, less, and what we yield is also sometimes destroyed in the process of transporting it. So a major suggestion for that was that large scale production units to be set up and built closer to the consumption areas, so that the transportation does not destroy our yield and the prices don't go very high. So these are some major changes, some suggestions that the budget has adopted. One more major change that they have adopted is, so when we say that food inflation, a major reason was also weather, the finance minister in today's budget announced multiple times that they are going to get funding from private sectors to develop climate resilient variety of crops. So this is a major factor. They have announced that they are going to develop climate resilient variety of crops, 109 variety of crops. So there are changes, we are trying to get it. I think the budget announced a few things, but yes, it completely ignored food inflation, and there were only 2 points, that is the static growth of the stable growth of inflation was mentioned. Nothing else was mentioned regarding inflation. So the common man still asks the same question, that when will the prices of basic food items like onions and tomatoes come down?
Thank you. As you mentioned that our economy is growing at a stable growth. So coming to GDP and the government spendings and borrowings, we can now move on to Mimaansha Srivastava, who will now be explaining how the targeted real and nominal GDP growths are connected to the government's annual borrowings and spendings.
Before looking at India's GDP growth over the years, let's understand what real and nominal GDP is. Nominal GDP is the total value of goods and services produced in an economy at current price, where real GDP is same adjusted for inflation. Now coming to the graph, we'll be focusing on the real GDP here, as it shows the actual data of how much an economy has grown. So we'll be focusing on the GDP growth from FY 2020 to FY 2024. The chart shows economic growth of China, United States and India. So moving forward, FY 20 saw a decline of minus 5.8% in FY 2020 because of the pandemic and disruptions in the supply chain and spending decline in the consumer spending. But the economy maintained its momentum in the FY 2021 with the growth rate of 8.7, after which the momentum was maintained in financial year 2022 with 7% and 2023 with 7.6. Now the India's GDP has grew to by 8.2%, that 8.2% excluding 8% marks in 3 out of 4 quarters. In 2025, it is projected to grow between 6.5 to 7%. While talking about USA and China, US's inflation and China's zero COVID policy has contributed to slower GDP growth rate. When inflation was rising and GDP growth was declining in every other country, India has managed to maintain a steady GDP growth rate. Now, some of the projected data: projected fiscal deficit for the financial year 2025 is 4.9. Total receipts for financial year 2024 and 24 is rupees 32 lakh crores. Total expenditure for FY24 is rupees 48.21 lakhs crore. Now, coming to what fiscal deficit is. Fiscal deficit is the difference between the expenditure and the revenue. When the government runs deficit, it borrows money to finance shortfall. This money can lead to higher interest rate and lower economic growth. Therefore, the government has managed to reduce its fiscal deficit and set a fiscal deficit target for FY 2025 at 4.9%, which is lower than 5.1% announced in the interim budget of 2024. Thank you. Getting back to Anushka and our experts to know more about the GDP and the inflation.
Thank you so much, Mimamsa. That was very informative. So, as we can see, the budget has a fiscal deficit of 4.9% of our GDP for the fiscal year 2024-25, and India's GDP growth is projected at a 6.7% for fiscal year 2025. The country is now on the track to become the world's third largest economy by 2027. So, the government continues to borrow significantly to reduce the fiscal deficit for a better result of the GDP. So, now my question is, how can India maintain its growth trajectory and achieve its economic milestones while also ensuring responsible spending?
We have to...
Excuse me, 1 second. Before we move ahead with answering this question, your last question, I forgot to mention one point. You had asked about LTCG and STT. So you had asked about that even though the government has abolished angel tax, but it has increased the long-term capital gains and security transaction tax. What is the government trying to do? I think what I understand is the government is trying to bring in more formal way of working in the market. The market, even though to announce the market crashed today after the budget speech, so it was primarily because of this, but the market, they are trying to regulate the market more because the angel tax was primarily for the unlisted companies. So now that it has been abolished, they are trying to, by increasing the long-term capital gains and security transaction tax, they are trying to bring in more formality into this.
Agreed, it was a short-term effect. It will change. Coming back to the question, fiscal deficit has been reduced to 4.9% from 5.1 as mentioned in the last budget. So one major reason for this is that in RBI's dividend, last year in the financial 23, the RBI dividend was around 87,000 crores, which has increased to 2.1 trillion rupees this time. So this change has increased the government's finances, government's capacity to invest more, and because of that the borrowings and debt has reduced, because of which the fiscal deficit has reduced, and the projections are very right, they will continue to bridge the gap between both in the coming years, and it is expected to go lower to 4.6% soon. Can you repeat the next part of your question on the growth?
Yeah, my question was how do we expect to achieve our economic milestones while also ensuring responsible spending, so that we're not just spending on borrowings to increase the result in our GDP, but also ensuring fiscal prudence.
Right. I would like to say that in this case, it is a multifaceted thing. It's not only limited to us, but many other factors. For instance, the Economic Survey of India had mentioned yesterday that it is the global trust deficit due to the geopolitical situations, which is forcing all the nations to pursue policies that are focused on themselves, self-reliance policies. That is quite visible today as well. Due to the current geopolitical situations, the geopolitical risk index is at 121. Pre-pandemic, it was at 91, or it was in the range of 90 to 100. So that has increased. So because of which all the governments are trying to be self-reliant, right? So as we saw, the focus on having rupees as a investment in foreign investments, the reduction of taxes in foreign investment in Indian companies have been increased. So those are focusing on these, and that is the way to go forward. Apart from that, the custom duties that have been reduced on different products, say the mobile and all the mobile parts, it was mentioned in the budget that around 15% deduction has been it has been reduced to 15% on mobile and mobile parts. 25%, 25 critical minerals, the customs have been completely removed. Now, what are critical minerals? Critical minerals are like lithium, cobalt, the minerals that are mostly used in EVs and electric vehicles, the chip market. So that is the way forward. India is emerging as a great economy, as a competition to China's supplying force. So that's the way forward for us.
And also, I would like to add to Krishnanshu's point is that we are also moving towards sustainability if we look towards in the budget. In customs duty, we also have exempted capital goods for the use of like manufacturing of solar panels or like any other related sustainability material that we are looking forward to. So there's one more point to that.
I have a suggestion for that actually. So we know that the government is trying to emphasis on solar power and renewable energy and increasing the like they are providing subsidies for that. I completely agree with that. But is that reaching the rural population? Is that reaching on ground? Because there are these provisions, but is the public aware enough to use those and achieve help in achieving the dream of net zero carbon emissions?
Yeah, the finance minister also announced to extend the PM Suryakar Muft Bijli Yojana for rooftop solar panels to enable 1 crore households. It has been increased. Earlier it was less, and now that they have seen good response from this Yojana, they have increased it to 1 crore households, that more solar panels, rooftop solar panels will be given, and the scheme has generated good amount of results, and that is why it is there. Up to 300 units of electricity every month will be free because of these solar panel installations. So that is a major factor to keep in mind. And for India to maintain India's GDP and growth trajectory, again, yes, I agree, it is a multifaceted. We have to look at sectoral growth, we have to look at many other perspectives. Of it. And as the finance minister again announced that the measures that they had announced back in 2021 for maintaining the fiscal deficit have actually given results, and it is they're trying to bring it below 4.6%, and they're trying to bring it below 4.6% by the end of financial year 26.
Thank you so much. So yeah, to wrap up our discussion, we've covered a lot from income tax slabs, inflation and employment, government spendings and borrowings, and although the budget does require some improvements to strike a balance between sustained economic growth and providing relief to the middle class and the common man, it has put forth an excellent example of our government's financial planning. As India continues its economic journey, the decisions made today will shape the future for our years to come. I'd lastly like to thank our esteemed panel members for sharing their expertise and insights, and to our audience, thank you for tuning in to the Chronicle and engaging with us. We'll be right back after a short break with another panel on other real concerns. Till then, stay tuned.
Hello everyone, I am Srujana Deshmukh and welcome to the second section of the debate brought to you by the Chronicle. So in the first half, we delved into how the abolishment of angel tax for all investors will boost the startup ecosystem. And the new regime has some revised slabs as well, with the standard deduction increased from 50,000 to 75,000. Well, this panel will focus on the 9 priorities mentioned by the finance minister for the ultimate mission of Viksit Bharat 2047, marking the 100 years of independence. So to discuss these 9 priorities, we have with us student experts Bhagyashree, Marisha and Meenakshi, and also Mimansha. So before delving into the discussion, we have Mimansha who will inform us about the allocations made for the different sectors.
Yes, Srujana, let's talk about the allocation and schemes under different segments that we have received so far in Sitharaman's speech today morning. Rural development has been allocated 2.6 lakh crores, Agriculture and allied sector has been allocated with rupees 1.52 lakh crore. Education and employment and skilling has been allocated with rupees 1.48 lakhs crore. Urban housing with 2.2 lakh crore and defense with rupees 4.54 lakhs crore. Now there have been schemes that were announced in today morning speech. Under agriculture and allied sector, there will be focus on digital crop survey for Kharif to be conducted in 400 districts in financial year 25. Jan Sampat based Kisan credit cards will be enabled in 5 states. Now coming to the education and employment skillings, 1 month wage to all people entering workforce in the formal sector. This money will be provided through PF. The second is paid internship opportunities for 1 crore youth in the top 500 firms will be provided with allowance of 500 per month and one-time assistance of rupees 6,000. Now getting back to Srujna and her experts to know further details.
Right, thank you, Mamansha, for these allocations. So I would like to mention the 4 different sectors that were mentioned by our finance minister. And these 4 sections were also mentioned in the interim budget. So these are poor, women, youth and farmers. So now let's understand the first priority of our government, which is the productivity and resilience in agriculture.
So, agriculture contributes most to the economy, Indian economy, and it's very important for us to focus on that as well. And Finance Minister has announced substantial funding towards the research and development factor of the, and it focuses mostly on the production, storage and marketing of the oil seeds and pulses. So we have to take into consider that we have extreme climatic conditions in India right now. So there is 109 high yielding resilient climate crops which has been introduced as well, and she has also mentioned about in next 2 years 1 crore farmers will be initiated to natural farming.
With 1.52 lakh crore rupees allocated to the agricultural sector, we are looking for around 10 million farmers over the next 2 years to introduce or to get them in the domain of natural farming. Why natural farming is something that we all were thinking while our finance minister was telling, while she was emphasizing on the budget, is because we at this point are looking at increased profitability whilst reducing cultivation cost of farmers.
Right.
With the budget that has been provided to us, when we cut down on external factors such as expenditure on pesticides and fertilizers, we are bringing down a substantial amount of economy that has been going into that domain. Instead, we are providing the farmers a little bit more easier, organic or more sustainable farming option by introducing natural farming practices. We can say that the union budget of 24 for this year, we are considering and promoting a underlined language of a healthier lifestyle. When we are looking at the Viksit Bharat
2047
for 2047, that marks 100 years of independence for India. We are also looking at a population that is healthy, which has a lifestyle that is more organic in general.
Right. Also, it was in the interim budget, a lot was mentioned about the aquaculture. If you could speak more
We
about
can
it.
see that the government is trying to enhance their focus toward aquaculture at the moment. Even in the interim budget, the financial minister announced the implementation of the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana. And coming to the union budget, the budget provides financial support for setting up a network of nucleus breeding centers for shrimp broodstock. And now these centers are specialized facilities dedicated to breeding high quality disease-free shrimp.
Right.
And this would improve quality broodstock, which would lead to faster growing, healthier shrimp, resulting in higher yields for farmers. And this would potentially fetch premium prices in export markets, and it would boost the industry as a whole.
Right. So the second important section after farmers is our youth. And a lot of provisions have been made for youth enhancement and skill development. So keeping so many provisions have been made because keeping in mind the issue of unemployment. So let's talk about the schemes, loans and impact.
So to add on to that, as Mamansha had mentioned in her, while she was reading out the allocations, it is very clearly said that around, we are estimating 1.48 lakh crore to be diverted, to be budgeted for the employment and skilling sector. Today in the budget that we saw, the finance minister has mentioned that the government will be launching schemes. She has mentioned a bunch of schemes that have been said. The nitty-gritties and more details on these schemes will be released in the days upcoming. But I think one of the most influential, or one of the better parts of what she has mentioned, which really took the parliament by a lot of
It was applauded by the parliament.
yeah, it was applauded by the parliament, was that government will be providing financial support for loans of up to 10 lakhs for higher education in domestic institutions, which means institutions that are based in our nation, which is obviously increasing more attention to indigenous institutions. We as students, we aspire to go abroad and acquire foreign education, but what better than to equip our nation with institutions that are our students, are the next generation, the skilled that we are looking at, to acquire an education in our own domain. You know, we are looking at maximum loan amount that is being covered by the scheme, which they said like a maximum of 10 lakhs, right? This suggests that the government will also be partnering with banks, will be partnering with a lot of lending, money lending organizations and institutions as well.
Along with this, many provisions were made for the internship sectors also, right?
Yes, yes.
So let's talk about how internships have been introduced. Like, you know, the top 100 companies, 1 crore youth is going to benefit from it. So talk about that.
To get to the internship, where internship in top companies, something that the finance minister did mention was that almost 500 top companies will be opened up for around 1 crore youth in the next 5 years, which is an amazing amount, considering they will gain exposure for 12 months within the domain, within increasing of employment opportunities. They have also mentioned that an internship allowance of 5,000 per month, along with a one-time assistance of rupees 6,000, will also be provided.
Right.
Companies will be expected to bear the training cost of
The 10% of the CSR.
the training cost of training the interns, and also 10% of the internship cost will be taken care from the CSR of the company that is being provided.
Right.
Yes.
Also, it's very important to consider that these provisions for education align with the new employment schemes to cope up with the loss of jobs we've been seeing.
And also, emphasis on just quick skilling might lead to a workforce that lacks deep and industry specific, which can affect the productivity and all those things. You know, it has to be more industry specific, so that for more innovation and productivity, we need skills which align, as you said, which align with the industry.
Right. So basically what has happened, the factory of unemployed youth, which was generated all this while, has got somewhere apart. So to bridge the employment and skill development, we also need to focus on developing social justice and inclusive human resources.
Also, to add on to your point, when we spoke about how we are giving more scope for education, employment and skill development, we are also considering the potential impact that we're about to see. Increased enrollment. With that, I mean easier access to loans that lead in the rise of enrollment of for higher education, right? We are looking at a skilled workforce. We are looking at students who are being enabled, who are able to pursue what they want to do, what they aspire to do, and be more skilled in the domain, in the sector that they are providing their work to. And also, we are looking at economic growth. Why are we doing what we are doing? We are doing it for economic growth, right? We are looking at educated population. We are looking at a potentially equipped and skilled population that is going to take our economy forward.
And also I have to add that women were an important factor in the whole budget, and they have brought a lot of things for women as well. Working women hostels will be set up. A 3 lakh crore budget, that is actually a pretty good amount to invest on women, and there will be higher participation of women in workforces to be promoted through hostels and creches in collaboration with the industries, and also they are partnering up with the self-help groups as well. It's a great thing.
So now let's jump to the manufacturing and services sector.
Yeah.
Right. So here we'll talk about how the MSMEs have been impacted with the Mudra loan coming into the picture.
Okay, so MSME is micro, small, medium enterprises. It has been a topic of discussion for a very, very long time, and Pradhana Mantri Mudra Yojana, which was launched in 2015, they have doubled their loan limit from 10 lakhs to 20 lakhs, which is a great thing. And also MSME has been an important part of the Indian economy as well, and there is credit availability during stress period will be provided by the government, and also there is expansion of SIDBI banks to serve all the major MSME clusters with the advent of 24 new branches.
Right. So along with that, something about the e-commerce export hubs, if you could explain.
So, Sitharaman mentioned the establishment of e-commerce export hubs in public-private partnership, which aim to enable MSMEs and traditional artisans to sell their products in international markets.
Right.
Now, this would lead to increased sales, higher revenues, and greater economic opportunities for small-scale producers of our country.
Right.
The PPP model leverages the strengths of both the public and the private sectors. The government would provide regulatory support and infrastructure, while private partners could bring in expertise, technology, and market connections. The increased export activities facilitated by these hubs would lead to more job creation, which would, within the hubs, associated with logistics and indirectly through the growth of MSMEs and artisan
So
businesses.
somewhere to sum up, I think the problem of unemployment has been tackled, we could say, after this budget.
Yes, it actually bridges. There is a
Right.
certain bridge that has been aligned with the loans that we are looking at when
Right.
it comes to the education department.
Be it loans or be it
Loans,
internships also.
internships, all of that is so directly connected to the MSMEs.
And
in
also
this
the
sector.
fact that women has given a lot of importance is also a great thing
Yeah.
actually.
Of course, it is a section mentioned.
Yes, yes.
It's a little far-fetched to say that it has already been tackled, because we need to make sure these
Of
new
course,
provisions
these are just
being
provisions,
implemented.
promised provisions.
It has to be implemented nicely, correctly.
I'd like to rephrase as they
Yes.
are promised provisions.
Yes,
Of course,
it has to be
Viksit
implemented,
Bharat
yes.
2047 is the goal.
Absolutely.
Right, so now let's talk about urban development. That is the priority number 5. So here we'll talk about the floods, the Polavaram irrigation development scheme, and some special allotments made for some special states. So yes,
I would like to add on to the flood, like
Okay.
you mentioned.
Right.
We have states such as Sikkim, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Assam, that are highly flood struck.
Yeah.
In the past
Flood
1
prone
year,
regions, yes.
flood prone. We've had immense amount of damage that has been caused by low irrigation systems due to high flooding and all of that. And to tackle this is something that was mentioned in today's budget, was financial support for setting up 50 multi-product food irrigation units in the MSME sectors will be provided. We are setting up flood quality and safety testing labs as well, close to these, close to the flood-stricken areas, of course, to enable MSMEs and traditional artisans to sell their products in the these concepts that have been come about, to first establish them in our irrigation system, in our productivity, and then if it works out well and good, if not, we do not put it forth in the international market. But if it is a success, this can definitely be a revolutionary point when it comes to internationally introducing our flood safety measures.
so I think the Polavaram, that scheme
Yes.
has
So
been introduced
the
to tackle the
The
irrigation.
thing is, the Polavaram irrigation project hasn't been introduced this time. in this budget, the government has just promised to finish this. The foundation for this project was set in 1980.
Really?
Yes, and it was passed on to the union in 2014, and it has been promised for completion. So let's see if they actually follow
So they'll
through
be
with it.
working on this project.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
they've promised to complete it this time.
Right. So I'd also like to mention the special allotments made for Bihar and Andhra Pradesh especially. So would you like to throw some light on that?
So definitely we have to consider a lot of politics in this. That is of course part of it, and it is ruled by the parties who support, which is critical to maintain a majority in the parliament, and I don't think so. I don't feel anything wrong in that. It is part of the politics. You have to do it.
Coalition government.
Yes, definitely.
Exactly. So the government is transitioning from a quasi-federal system to a more
Federal
federal
system.
approach, following the coalition dynamics seen in the recent election. This shift aims to grant greater autonomy to states and promote a more collaborative way of governance. And under the Purvodaya plan, the focus is on comprehensive development in Bihar and Andhra Pradesh mainly, and also Jharkhand, West Bengal and Odisha.
To understand more about the Bihar and Andhra Pradesh special allotments, we have Mimaansha who will be throwing light on this topic.
Hi. Yes, Rojna, some announcements for Bihar and Andhra Pradesh mentioned in Nirmala Sitharaman's speech today morning. I will be summarizing that. For Andhra Pradesh, government will facilitate financial support for the development of the Andhra Pradesh new capital, that is Amravati, and will provide rupees 15,000 crore for financial assistance. So grants for backward regions of Rayalaseema, Prakasam and North Coastal Andhra will also be provided. Now moving forward to Bihar. Union government to provide financial aid for Bihar through multilateral agencies, and rupees 20,000 crores announced for highways in Bihar, 11 crores for flood mitigation. Now back to Srujna and experts for further discussions.
Right, thank you Mimaansha. So of course I'd like to make a comment that we can clearly see that coalition has somewhere impacted the budget. So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
because
it's not
we
definitely.
are again progressing.
Yeah,
So now
I have to mention one more thing in the in the urban development. In the budget speech, the government, Sitharaman has said the government will support the creation of an industrial corridor for development in the eastern region, which is actually important. I think we have been neglecting eastern region for a very quite long, so it's an important.
come in the picture.
Yes, it's a great thing to do.
I think there has been substantial amount of loss that has been faced. Hence there is this sudden urge to bring in a lot of attention in those areas. Obviously, we are looking at a spectrum of politics. We are looking because we just.
But we can keep that aside.
Yes.
Yes,
We
we
just
can keep
came
that
from
aside and look at more
Absolutely.
economical.
Yes,
economics.
definitely.
Moving on to another priority, which is green energy, because green energy is the need of the today's hour. So, any schemes that has been introduced or provisions made under green energy priority?
Yes, actually for the energy security, we had the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana,
Right.
which is basically we will be launching a scheme which has launching of solar panels that will be installed on top of houses to instigate or to promote or to even gain free electricity in this, because we see we are looking at enabling around 1 crore households to obtain free electricity up to 300 units
Right.
each month, which is a substantial amount. We are looking at development not only in terms of economy, not only in terms of monetary resources, but we are looking at sustenance. We are looking at conservation. We are looking at energy supplies, and I think with this around 300 units each month that has been which we would be getting via solar panels is actually quite a wonderful
Sustainability is the
sustainable
word.
Yes,
So
and
it's a very
also
sustainable
And the world.
option, absolutely.
And also, nuclear energy is also crucial in the mix of Viksit Bharat, and it is expected to form a very significant part of the energy mix for Viksit Bharat. And there have been research and development for the newer technologies in nuclear technology as well. It was also published. It was also mentioned in the interim budget, if I'm not sure. So that is also a key takeaway from the economic budget for the energy security.
One thing I would like to add, which is a very interesting perspective towards what Sitharaman did mention. She proposed that to expand the list of exempted capital goods used in manufacturing of these solar panels, right? But she further also proposes to not extend the exemption of custom duties that are provided on them, which is rather a very new angle to it, because we are also we are looking at providing, we are looking at sustenance and provision of sustenance, but we are also pulling a few strings back as well.
Right. I think the adds and minuses.
It adds
Yes.
and minuses.
Yeah. So let's move to infrastructure. Of course, we can't move ahead without mentioning that 11.11 lakh crore has been allocated for capital expenditure this year, which is 3.4% of our GDP. So how will this impact now? Because in agriculture, in the infrastructure priority.
So there is government support for traditional micro and macro small metallurgy industries, which is a very good thing, and yeah.
Let me tell.
Infrastructure will always, of course, address the roads, the other urban town planning. So the Sadak Yojana has been introduced, I think, or if any would like.
Yeah, Sadak Yojana has been introduced. It was actually introduced way back by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and this is the fourth phase of it, and they're providing all-weather roads to rural areas, which is a really good thing. It can give a lot of economic growth and connectivity to the rural areas.
Let me tell you something very interesting about infrastructure.
Right.
Like you mentioned, around 11.11 lakh crore of our budget has been diverted towards infrastructure. And I think that's such an interesting amount to firstly invest. And also, talking about infrastructure, infrastructure is a capital expense. It is something that once you invest in, the returns of it is going to be more. And it's going to be a long-term investment. We are looking, I'll just give you a small example. A very statistical example that I read somewhere is that let's say you invest 1 rupee in infrastructure, the return of that is 2 rupees. So if we are budgeting around 11.11 lakh crore in infrastructure,
Then the
you
new
can
figure
just
is-
imagine.
the new
You can
figure
just
is
imagine what the returns of it. You can just imagine the returns of it that
Right,
you're
right.
getting, and I think that is such a phenomenal place
Right,
to
right.
be at when it comes to our growing GDP, because we have noticed a growth in our GDP. We are not denying that fact,
And I
and
think
this
we
is
are
just upping our game.
But it's also important to consider how recently we saw the infrastructure failing to actually stay.
How is it so?
We
If you
saw
could-
4 airports in India, 4 ceilings of airports fell. There have been flyovers falling off, bridges falling off in Maharashtra and Mumbai.
In Bihar as well. In
specifically
Bihar,
as
there was
well.
well.
Right.
So all of this money is going toward infrastructure, but is it truly going toward infrastructure only? Because it's only being allocated. We're not sure if it's being
I think
spent
the term
there.
corruption comes right, the term corruption enters here.
I think it's just the economic budget we are talking. I think implementation is the latter
Latter
part.
process,
So
yeah,
it's
the
just,
latter
I
part.
think we have to.
You can't eradicate
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
from the system.
Yes,
There are
yes.
systems
It's
that
not
Keep an eye
perfect in
out.
the.
you can keep an eye
But again,
on.
Viksit Bharat 2040 Senal
Is our goal.
Yeah, is our goal. So coming to tourism now. So Bihar was the only state mentioned again and again because of the temples, maybe, and again the passing remark was made on Odisha. So something around that, if you would like to explain.
So there's this development of Vishnupad temple corridor, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Mahabodhi temple corridor and Rajgir, and there is assistance for development for temples, monuments, craftsmanship, wildlife sanctuaries, and pristine beaches of Odisha as well. It's not just Bihar. So
Right,
we
the
have,
passing remarks were made.
yeah,
But of course, we can hear the.
yeah. Bihar was mentioned twice,
Right,
maybe, yeah.
right.
I'd like to add on that. In fact, yes, we've heard Bihar being reiterated. We've heard states like Orissa being reiterated again and again and again. But let's not forget how rich in culture these states are.
Right.
These states have, just because in the past, and it stands true even now, Bihar being one of the most, the least literacy, carrying the least literacy in our nation,
Right.
we tend to have a stereotype that says that, okay, there cannot be a lot of monetary support that comes from that end. But I think when it comes to initiating initiatives such as development of temples to bring tourist attraction, to bring global attention to these temples, I think it's giving us a little bit more of a boom to get more economy rolling, to get more monetary support, to get more monetary backing from these states as well. Because why are we only known for education? Of course, not forgetting Nalanda University. Nalanda
Yes,
University
yes.
has been actually put up on a global tourist standpoint, and I think that is so well deserved. I think Nalanda University having the most history, being one of the most historic and iconic pieces that can draw attention. Why not? Why can't we bring economy rolling in the tourist domain in these states as well?
So I think it's not just the coalition
It
part.
is not just
it
the
is of course
coalition.
the economic POV
Economic
coming
point
into
of view.
picture and
Absolutely.
playing the role.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
So I think we have covered the 9 priorities mentioned by our Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. So, but surprisingly, health and defense was not mentioned as a priority. So let's debate or discuss around those points, starting with
Health.
defense. Starting with defense.
Defense, yeah, it is actually quite surprising with the Agnipat scheme coming in, and also now they're changing it to another scheme. So yeah, but other than pension scheme, I don't think so much was delivered towards defense, which is quite concerning, I guess. With the in terms of health, a lot of things were said on the interim budget, which is like the HPV vaccines provided for 9 to 15-year-old girls.
Yeah, the cervical cancer.
Yes, cervical,
right.
which was not mentioned in the budget. That is actually concerning. And
Yeah, that will come to the
that is quite concerning, and also the fact that a lot of other things, that the Ayushman Bharat scheme was not mentioned.
After defense, we'll talk about health as well. So defense only the one pension scheme.
Yeah,
is
that's
mentioned.
it.
Yeah.
I have something to say about the defense. Let's take the current situation. We are looking at a lot of government bodies being privatized. Let's take the ammunition factory in Pune that is there. That has now been privatized to MIL
Yeah.
Limited.
Yes.
Right? These are places which have been and have served as government organizations, government bodies, and the sudden privatization of these government bodies, which definitely do affect the pension scheme, because there has been a set of regulations, there has been a set of patterns that have been going on since ages now.
So I think the pension scheme rightly addresses this issue as well.
Yes, yes.
It has been made after some examination.
Yes, yes.
So coming to health, which were eagerly because the cervical cancer one which you mentioned, and also the Ayushman Bharat scheme, which was widely spoken about in the
Yeah.
Indian budget. So something about that
Yeah,
was not mentioned at all.
Ayushman Bharat scheme for it was there for a very long time. So they said that they'll be adding ASHA workers as well as Anganwadi workers to it. But this hasn't been mentioned in the budget. It's actually quite surprising in that way.
Also, an interesting point of view, I'd like to get into the picture that the doctor-patient ratio in India is the least,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So why aren't we addressing these issues as well?
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
infrastructure, okay, but it's as good as creating educational institutes without having the up-to-the-mark teachers. I mean,
Yes,
it's that.
exactly.
So we have to address
Those issues as well.
those issues as well.
As when we know NEET and BJE, all these, just to get premium education, you have to go through a godly impossible kind of examination process, and also the fact that we don't have a lot of college institutions. That is also one of the reasons why we don't have much doctors, and most doctors, they're preferring to go outside and study for their higher educations. And these things has to be considered. I think infrastructure, more health institutions and colleges should have been there. Of course, we forgot that.
There is no changing facts. We are not changing facts that yes, we still have a lot to do. But the budget of 24 that has been released now is catering to a substantial amount.
Yes.
We're talking about increasing educational hubs.
like-
We're talking
yeah.
about giving more opportunity, developing
Skills.
skill development.
I think it's the right first step towards
it's the
Viksit
right
Bharat.
first step.
Yes,
towards
yes,
Viksit Bharat.
absolutely.
So we have discussed the different priorities and allocations and some areas where the union budget lacked. But along with this, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has also presented the budget for the Union Territory Jammu and Kashmir. Over 42,000 crore has been allocated to Jammu and Kashmir. So the main reason is to just make the Union Territory more multidimensional. So the budget 2024 focused on employment, skilling, MSMEs and middle class. So we had an insightful conversation with our experts and Mimansha, of course, and I hope it provided you all with a comprehensive understanding of the Union Budget 2024. With that, thank you and stay tuned to the Chronicle for more updates. Thank you.